So what we're doing now, I'm actually right in the middle of an oil change, but also we've got a pretty bad oil leak, and it's I got up on here probably 2 weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, and sprayed the oil pan real good with brake cleaner and kind of got it all cleaned up. So all the oil you see here, all over here and over here, up here. You can see a little driplet on that bolt there. All that is fresh oil. So, the front seal looks to be in good shape. What I think is probably going on is the oil pan gasket is probably leaking. That's the only thing that really makes sense for this bolt here. Sorry, I've got a cold. This bolt here to be oily, but I'm also wondering if this adapter could be leaking, and if it is, because the oil filter itself was oily too, where oil has just, it's like oil has just run down the filter. So maybe if this is leaking, that will slow it down enough to where it doesn't really matter. Because when I bought this thing, it was oily underneath, but it was never enough to be low. Now it leaks enough to where I'll have to add a little bit of oil, about a quart between changes, and it used to not be that way. You know, it may be half a quart down between changes. Now it's kind of gotten to a whole quart, and it's not burning it or anything. It's definitely leaking, and it's not really enough to drip, but it's enough to kind of keep everything under here coated in oil. So it's very possible it's the rear main seal, but this gasket here is $3, and it's 2 bolts to pull it out. So I'm going to go ahead and replace that just because it's so easy and cheap to replace, and we'll go from there. So these look like 10 millimeters, so I will grab a 10 millimeter. We'll take these 2 bolts out. First, I'm going to spray some brake cleaner up in here, kind of get that cleaned up. I am in the middle of doing an oil change, so I think what I'll do is I wanted to go ahead and pull the filter off because I have a feeling as soon as I pulled this off, since the check valve and the oil filter is holding oil above the filter, if I didn't pull the oil filter off, as soon as I loosen these bolts, it was probably going to, all that oil that was up in here was probably pour out. So I think what I'll do is go ahead and put the new filter on. That way when I spray all this off, I'm not getting contaminant, you know, possibly up in here, dirt and grime and stuff. So if I go ahead and put the new filter on, we can avoid that, and we'll seal this all back up. Alright, so we got our new filter on, like I said, since we were in the middle of an oil change. The other thing you could do is just loosen the old filter, kind of let it drain, and then put the old filter back on, and then do this, then of course change the filter and all that. So I'd recommend doing this while you're doing an oil change if you replace this gasket. I've sprayed some brake cleaner all around to kind of knock off a lot of the grunge and stuff that's built up around this little block off plate. And let's get these 2 bolts out, and let's see what this gasket looks like. Now I don't know if I mentioned it, but what that is, that's the oil cooler block off plate. This Suburban does not have an oil cooler, an external oil cooler. So it's got this block off plate. If you had an external oil cooler, I think a lot of the 6.0s did in the 2500 and stuff like that, then you would have two lines, of course, bolted up instead of that block off plate. One quick note, leave your oil pan in place, because as I and I did leave mine in place, or I pulled it back in as I started loosening the bolts. As I pulled it away from the block, just a little bit of oil came out, so don't want that spilling on the ground. Alright, so here's our new gasket. It's just kind of a thin metal gasket. It's got a little bit of a coating on it. The old one is an aluminum gasket with a rubber seal made into it. And then, so I kind of like the design of the old one better, but we'll put this new one in, and if the new one ends up leaking, I'll go to GM and get a new one of these style gaskets. So that's the part number, but like I said, I'm not crazy about this gasket, but I don't think it'll leak. I think I'll put it on dry. I'm sure it's made to be installed dry. It doesn't say. So we'll get this old one off and we'll get our new one on. So I got this thing cleaned up. Let's take our new gasket, take it under the Suburban, and get it installed. Alright, so it's installed. I went ahead and just kind of sprayed off any oil that was on there. We're going to want to, since I did drain it to do an oil change, my new filter of course is tight and everything, I'm going to go ahead and fill it up with oil, and then we will crank it up and make sure we don't have any leaks. Make sure, where we put that gasket on, it's not leaking or anything. So I got it running. Wanted to scoot up under here, make sure that gasket's not leaking. And it's dry. We appear to be in good shape. So we'll see if that stops or at least slows down our oil leak. So thanks for watching.